Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm Rebecca Green. I'm the founder of Dear Producer. I don't know about all you guys, but for me, I'm a little worn out on COVID-19 conversations and how we're going to get back into production and how COVID's disrupted distribution. And I know all those conversations are important. I've had them. We're going to be having more on Dear Producer, but I really wanted to offer everybody kind of a reprieve from those conversations. And I'm really happy to welcome my friends Neil and Channing today to talk about their new film, Miss Juneteenth, which was released on demand and on virtual cinemas last week. And so for those of you who are new to Dear Producer, I created the website in 2017 to help bring the producing community together and educate the industry on what it actually is producers do. If you're not subscribed to the newsletter, I encourage you to go to the website and sign up. That way you'll be aware of future webinars we do. I do have a few amazing sponsors to thank: Genuine Article Pictures, CineReach, the Creative Producer Residency at the Nevada City Film Festival, and the New Orleans Film Festival. I have so many sponsors because Dear Producer is all volunteer effort, and it's important to me to keep all the content free. And so their support has allowed me to do that and to keep working on the site. And for those of you who have a finished film on your hands right now, as a sponsor, the New Orleans Film Festival is offering everyone who's tuned in a 75% discount on their submission fee to their festival. You can enter the code Dear Producer when you submit on Film Freeway for the discount, and their submission deadline is June 30th. So that's my intro. Now we'll kind of move on to the topic at hand, which is a full case study of the film. So we're going to go kind of from very, very beginning, to where they are as of last week in releasing the film, and getting kind of the nuts and bolts of how the film came together and got out into the world. If you have questions to ask, add it to the Q&A box. I won't really see them in the chat, but feel free to throw out questions in the in the Q&A box. And it's great to put your screens on gallery mode, which is at the top right corner of your screen. So, Channing, we asked everybody to watch the film in advance, obviously, but for those who may have not watched it yet, do you want to kind of give us just the quick pitch of the story?
Can everybody hear me okay? Because I'm having a weird thing where I can't cut you down, where really I can't hear you through my headphones. So is everybody hearing me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I'm just take my headphones off because these aren't useful. So everybody, I wanted to, welcome you and thank you for being here. It's amazing for us to be able to connect with Rebecca about this, and we were excited when we heard that she wanted to talk. But, for those who've seen the film, you know what the film's about. For those who haven't, Neil, who is a producer on the film, and I started working on this film quite some time ago, and it's set in my hometown of Fort Worth, Texas, on the south side of Fort Worth, which is a historical Black community. And it's about a woman named Turquoise, who is a former beauty queen, who is now a hardworking single mother who's preparing her rebellious teenage daughter named Kai for the Miss Juneteenth pageant. And she's hoping to keep her from repeating her same mistakes. And hopefully I'll be able to clarify what the Miss Juneteenth pageant is, because it's so, it doesn't do it justice to just call it a beauty pageant. It really is a scholastic beauty pageant for young African-American women seeking to gain college scholarship. And it's a pageant in which they're not only having one event annually, it really is about what they believe is preparing young Black women for the world, most often in a society that doesn't support them.
Thank you. And the pageant is a real thing that happens. It's an actual event.
Yeah, it's an actual event, and something that I grew up going to, and really was a formative event for me because, as I've mentioned, all the contestants are young African-American women. And for me, it was formative in that I was a young Black girl in Fort Worth, and it gave me a chance to see all these beautiful young Black women on stage. It gave me a chance to see, I think, young women that look like me. And I think that's why it's been so impactful to me. And, it's something that I thought about writing about all these years later. And while we're on the subject of young women, I want to caution everyone that both Neil and I are parents of a toddler. So if my daughter starts crying in the background, I may have to run off and comfort her, and leave Neil to kind of pick the
She's
slack.
welcome to join you on screen. We support working mothers.
Yeah, that was the nature of this production as well. You know, we were navigating having an infant at that time who turned 1 on set, basically. So we're constantly juggling mommy and daddy duty and our beautiful little girl.
Nice. Well, Neil, I think, I don't remember when I first met you guys, but I've known of your project for a very long time. I used to manage the producing lab at Sundance like a decade ago. And so at some point got to it through the labs. Why don't you just kind of let us know, like you and Channing, how you guys met and started working together would be a great place to start.
Definitely. Hi, everybody. So yeah, my name is Neil Creque Williams. I'm one of the producers of MISS JUNETEENTH. And so, yeah, Channing and I met 10 years ago this year. It was March, I guess, of 2010. We both were grad students at USC. And initially we met because Channing had made a short film called Red that was shot in the same community that we shot MISS JUNETEENTH in. And she was looking for someone to come in and edit the film. And I was, coming in to help edit. Ended up staying on to ultimately do like some reshoots and post and festival strategy, and basically ended up like kind of, producing the film. And at the end of, like, I guess the thing that connected us back then and kind of connects us today is that we both are from the South. And when I saw just like the footage of her movie, like it reminded me of parts of the South that I knew in North Carolina, but it was different because it was Texas. I'd never been to Texas at that point in my life. So it was really weird to see a place that was foreign, but also very familiar. And that was kind of like, hey, these are the kind of movies I want to make. And so we kind of creatively connected on that project, really, fast forward, a year later, we're like dating, also made the movie, and Channing was finishing that film and we were getting ready to, I have a whole list. I told Rebecca I made a whole
Go for it. Neil came prepared.
So basically, like, we finished the film Red and started doing festival strategy. And around, I guess it was 2012, 2013, it was like, hey, what's next? What do you want to do next? So Channing had a film that MISS JUNETEENTH is what it would ultimately be. And we were in a writing group in 2013 with some friends from film school. And, it was the same thing. We all do like 10 pages a week. Holding each other accountable. And from that, Channing came up with a couple scripts, but MISS JUNETEENTH was the one that like we really wanted to move on. And then 2014, we left LA and we're like, we're just going to go to Texas and make our movie no matter what. We're going to kickstart it. We're going to shoot it on the 7D. We're going to do an iPhone, whatever we have to do to make the movie.
What was it?
And, that kind of started the process that I'll get into later about the development programs and meeting our producers and our financiers and making the movie last year.
Somebody sent in a question to me, which I thought was great, which, besides being smitten with Channing, what was it about the script, this particular story for you that, made you want to put all your heart and soul and energy into getting this one off the ground?
Well, it was crazy because, like, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I'll say it. The first time Channing shared the script with me, I had been to Texas because we had done Red, but I didn't really know the depth of like Juneteenth and how it was celebrated here. So I was very much like an outsider and felt like I was somewhat of an outsider, even though I love the South and I love Channing's stories. Like when I first came here, when we first got on the script. So part of leaving in 2014 was also kind of spending time in the community, celebrating Juneteenth, going to a bunch of parades, going to a bunch of like Texas specific things. Once I did that, it was literally like half an afternoon. Once I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, okay. Like, I could see this film could be cool because you're talking about the history and you're dealing with the character navigating like all these bigger themes, but it feels like, it feels grounded. And so I just wanted to make that movie because I was like, I've not seen this movie before. And I just was like, I want other people to see the movie. I want them to feel excited like I feel excited being in this parade and seeing these things. And that's literally like, that's how it started. And we'll keep talking about this, but the journey was like, we're shooting this summer. It was always like, we're shooting this summer.
Well, and I'll say too, I'll admit, I knew, I had heard of Juneteenth, but I didn't really know the significance of celebration And I really learned that through reading your script, which, you know, is the importance of having, you know, a wide range of people telling stories is to also from the educational standpoint. So go, you know, and I think that why I was interested in doing a case study with you guys too, is I think I teach a lot, and everyone had, like, there's always such a sense of urgency, but I don't think everyone realizes how long some of these projects take. Not some, most of these films, you know, get to indie films to get off the ground. And so I do appreciate you putting together the actually specific dates for people to know and track it. And it always is, we're going to go this summer, we're going to go this summer.
Right.
So once you got to LA, you know, what was kind of the process of starting to get it off the ground? And also, as someone who hadn't produced a feature yet, you hadn't raised money for a feature yet.
Right.
That is the question I get the most from people, is how do you even start that process?
Well, and Channing jump in obviously, but I mean, for us, we were going to go Kickstarter. Like, we had other friends, you know, I shouted them out in the past, but like, you know, Mira Manan had made Farrah Goes Bang, and we knew her when she was doing that. And it was like, okay, cool. Like, we can, like, we want to Kickstarter Seed and Spark or anything like that. And we had experience doing that stuff too with our shorts. So that was kind of our thought process, you know? You know, I think the big thing for us was like, and this is what I learned too, like as a producer, is like, it's all about kind of protecting Channing's voice and protecting the voice and that excitement, I guess, for me, like of being in the community and seeing the world and saying, I've not seen this on film, I want to see it happen. So the big question became more like, how do we protect the vision, the voice, the world, and capture it on film, more so than like, how does the film get made? Like, if that makes sense for me, like, I went from like okay, great, we can make it with this 7D and some family and friends can give us money, to like, well, is that the best way to make this story, you know? And that's kind of where I think the timeline kind of expanded and the program started. And, you know, even finding producers like Sailor Bear and you know, finding financing and everything was coming from a place of like, how do you protect this idea of what we think this film could be, right? And that was a big change for me from like beginning the process till now.
Channing, for you, you know, what in that kind of early stages of, you know, having that urgency to want to tell your story and it taking maybe longer than you thought, or maybe you anticipated, you know, years of trying to get it off the ground, what was the process like for you? Not just in, you know, the nuts and bolts of it, but just, I think it's emotionally, it's hard to make these films and to stick with it and stay excited. And so what was that kind of journey like for you in the early stages? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, I told you, I think baby's roaming.
Oh, that's okay. It's totally fine.
I think for me, you know, it was really, I had this, you know, idea, you know, and these ideas really swimming around in my head, you know, and it wasn't even, I don't think, focused at this time. Rebecca, you got to hold on a minute. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Neil,
you go.
I'll pick up.
Neil, I'm going to let you
Neil.
pick up while I get baby. I'm sorry, guys. Oh my
Don't apologize.
So basically, I mean, yeah, for Channing, you know, even with Red, the film she made coming out of film school, it was always about like really honoring and respecting like the women and the culture that she grew up in Texas. And like, I think that really became what I realized when we were here for Red, but really for Juneteenth, it was, she just found a way of kind of like finding the stories and the moments and the characters and the feelings, I guess, from here, and just wanted to kind of mine those. So being like relocating from LA to Texas was really helpful for me, even as outsider, but definitely for Channing to kind of be in the influence of the movie, I think.
So what were those first steps of, okay, I've got the script, we love it, we want to do this, we know how to do this. What was the first steps to putting the money together?
Well, okay. Before money, and I'll get to the money, but before money, it was
everybody
like,
just always wants to know about money.
No, I get you. And you know, and
Take your time.
honestly, like, you know, the money, the majority of our financing came through Leyline Entertainment. And so you have Teresa Steele Page, who was our financier. And, you know, she's a Black woman who, you know, greenlit the project, which was great. And then, you know, that relationship came through, you know, James and Toby and David, who had worked with them before. So, I mean, the financing is pretty, for our end, was
and also for the audience to know, James, Toby, and David are Sailor Bear, but they're also all Texans.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And so, and they joined the project back in like 2015, like early.
Oh, was that early? I didn't realize it was that early.
And so, you know, basically, so that's kind of like the financing, like the big question, like where'd the financing come from? Like that's how it happened. But like, you know, as far as like where we were, like, you know, small, you know, we're thinking Kickstarter and everything else. For us, like we made a mood reel. Like for us, it was always like every year or every 6 months or every year trying to find like a tangible thing we could do or point to say, hey, the movie's moving forward. So, you know, first it was us just working on the script back in 2014. And we were like, we're going to shoot this summer. And we started casting and everything else. By the end of 2014, we were like, well, we think the script may need more than what we know right now, but we didn't know how to get that. So we started applying to screenwriting programs and like, you know, the Sundance programs, really thinking more about receiving feedback than like a winning any kind of an award,
Sure.
you know, and trying to build community. And, you know, Channing gets into Sundance Screenwriting Intensive, which eventually connected us to like, you know, Sailor Bear and those guys. But I guess we also made a mood reel in 2014, which was really helpful for like figuring out the vision of how Channing wanted to make the movie.
Well,
So it was like,
just explain what the mood reel was for people.
okay, yeah, the mood reel was literally like a series of lines and scenes from the movie, that really, we just had Channing in it, you know? And we found a young lady who was about 14 who could kind of sit in for Kai. And that just became kind of like an idea of like, this is what the movie's gonna be about, how it's gonna feel, some of the music. It's funny because, you know, we showed that mood reel for a little bit, but it also was kind of in the same spirit of like, this is like a scrappy, we're just gonna make it on our iPhones, kind of like it had that kind of feel. So we don't really show the mood reel anymore, and we stopped showing it after a while because it didn't represent the film we ultimately were gonna make. And yet, it's funny because while we were making the film, as we were trying to figure out, okay, what scenes need to change and morph and all this other stuff, we go back to the mood reel, like, wait, this was in the mood reel, we got to keep it, you know? So that was kind of cool, you know?
And
yeah.
so at what stage, like where were you in the process year-wise where you felt like, or well, a question would be, did you cast before you went out to raise money, or did you wait until you had your financing?
We had financing beforehand. So we were casting already financed, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, we like Channing, and Channing will speak to this, but like we were able to pick, you know, the actors we wanted, and we were very fortunate in that because it wasn't like, you know, you have to do this and do that, you know, very fortunate in that.
Well, it's not common, you know, the usual process is you have to be casted, you have to have people of note.
Right.
And that's where, you know, finding a financier who supports the vision, you know, first and foremost is really important, but isn't always the case.
Right. And I mean, I think, you know, that goes back to like the strength of our producing partners and our financier, like to really get behind the vision of the film. And I think that, like, for me, you know, if I was talking to any like, you know, filmmaker who's like trying to figure it out, the big switch for me was literally going from what do I have to do to get the movie made to like, how do I protect the movie we all think we're trying to make, you know? And, you know, it changes and evolves, but like being in a more of a mindset of like how to protect that vision was something I learned to lead with more, you know?
Yeah, and for people, you know, just to dissect a little bit what he's talking about, it's, you know, you go out and you set out to make a certain amount of money, but then the market tells you your movie's only worth X amount of money, so then your budget lowers. And then the next stage is how much can you actually raise? Like there's like 3 levels of raising money when you, as a producer, but sometimes the how much you can actually raise doesn't protect the vision, like Neil's saying. Like it's not going to deliver what's on the page. And you really have to decide, do you revise your script? Do you do something different? You know, are you compromising your story in that way? And that, I mean, all of us hit that place with all of our projects at a certain point. And that is the job of the producer to pay attention to that and make sure that you can deliver, you know, what's on the page and what you guys have wanted to do. What was the experience in Fort Worth? You know, it's not necessarily a production hub. So what, you know, but yet completely essential to telling your story. So what was the production experience like there?
Well, Fort Worth was great. The Fort Worth Film Commission was like, Jessica Christopherson there has been super, like, I think, gung-ho from probably the moment we met. I would say, I think we met in 2015 or 2016 or something. Just very much like, what can we do? How can we help? Fort Worth is here. We want to establish ourselves as like a unique place to make movies. You know, for those who don't know, Fort Worth is a part of the Dallas metropolitan area. So it's Dallas, Fort Worth to most outsiders, but Fort Worth is its own distinct place. So it was very important to everyone, you know, everyone that we showed Fort Worth. which I think is interesting as another outsider thing, because it's like Dallas is such a big city,
Yeah.
and Fort Worth is like the 13th largest city in the country still, and the metropolitan area is the 5th biggest metropolitan area in the country, and yet like it feels like a rural film, which is kind of how Fort Worth feels. So I don't know, it's interesting culture stuff.
What was the casting process once you knew the film was going?
Right. So, you know, it all started with the script. And I think, you know, we worked even after Sailor Bear joined, part of the journey was like making sure the script represented Channing's vision, and that when we sent that script out, people weren't asking questions. Well, what are you going to change here? It's like when the script was ready, it was like, this is a movie, like, you know, and I think we got it to that point. Right. And so for casting, it was literally, you know, Channing went out with the script. We had some great casting directors, Chelsea Ellis Bloss, who was out of LA, who helped with some of our non-Texas talent. And then locally, we had Buffalo casting, Tisha Blood and Matthew Taylor, who were right in Texas. And so we just kind of ping pong back and forth, like a lot of our Texas actors who like were literally not only added the flavor of the movie that Channing was making, but, you know, Buffalo casting really took the lead on that. And then, you know, we got Kendrick and Nicole from Chelsea for sure.
Yeah, no, it was a wonderful cast. They're really quite spectacular, especially the young woman who I didn't know before.
Yeah, Kai, Alexis Chikese, she was like, you know, just started again acting very recently, and just really had this wonderful kind of like pureness, I think, because she's like really a teen from the same kind of, you know, from Dallas, and just it was like one of those things you saw when she just kind of.
So she was local to Texas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was really, I think, a special part of the whole process, you know.
And what was when did you shoot? What was the time frame there?
So we started officially shooting July 9th, I think, was our shoot date. We started July 9th.
What year?
We had like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What year?
Oh, 2019.
Okay.
Last year. Yeah. So we're about a year up from when we shot. We did like a test shoot day, prep shoot day, I guess, July 4th, because we repurposed the July 4th parade and
nice.
made it a Juneteenth parade. Right. So that was officially our first day of shooting, but you know, that was July 4th, but really production started I think that Monday or something, you know.
Okay. And how many days was your shoot?
It was like 22 days.
That's pretty healthy.
Yeah. Very, not that much time, but I mean, you know, it's kind of consistent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any particular I mean, we'll ask Channing too when we get back, but how was it, you know, balancing, you know, just as a husband and wife team making a movie together, it's its own challenges, but now you have a baby in the mix and you're both new parents as you're making a movie. What was that experience?
Well, honestly, like it goes back to props to our producers, like, and Jeannie Igo, someone else, obviously, who was like part of our core producing team. Like even when we found out we were pregnant, I think in 2018, it was like, there was not a flinch or like, hey, okay, well, what are we going to do? It was like, okay, well, there'll just be a baby on set and we'll make this movie, you know? So that, you know, that's another thing where I'm just like, yeah, the producing team supporting us was just really great and understood like we were going to make this movie. And yet Zora's our baby. She was on set, you know, like she had her own little playroom near the production office, and we had like help sometimes from family or we had a nanny. But, you know, for the most part, like she was right there, and Channing was, you know, attending to her in between takes. And, you know, it was really kind of sweet. And I think Channing could speak to this, but the movie changed in a way. Like I think Turquoise was, there's Channing.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
Sorry, y'all. I got a flower from a toddler.
And now you're outside. Well, so Neil, I'm going to pull it away from you. I'm going to cut you off. I just started asking, we were talking about production and, you know, what it's like first just to be husband and wife team is its own struggles, but then you have your baby on set and you're learning to be a parent, and, you know, what was that process like for you, and just maybe how did it shift? You know, that's such a big life change. Did it change your view on the story or your process or your vision at all in terms of bringing a little one into the world?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely did, because I think I had this tough love version of Turquoise on paper, you know, and that remained, I think, because I really now I know I wrote the script really from the perspective of a daughter in a sense. You know, I was really writing it from as much as I could from Turquoise's perspective, but I grew up, you know, my mom was single for much of my life. And, you know, I think really what was informing Turquoise was, you know, seeing how she navigated parenthood and motherhood in particular. And it was interesting because after I had my baby, I felt, you know, something I can't even really describe, you know, probably, you know, I've been trying to articulate it and I've been having a hard time. It was just like, it was joy, but it was also like this sense of like terror all at the same time. Cause I was just like, oh my gosh, I have this little human being in the world and like, she'll have her own hopes and dreams. And like, am I going to be able to live up to that? And, you know, especially in the midst of like making this film, because just from a practical aspect, I was like, how are we going to do this? You know, I don't know if Neil talked about this, but, you know, like as an independent filmmaker, you know, one of the big things that you're navigating is personal finance yourself. You know, like how to, at least for me, you know, that was a thing, you know, how to like keep food on the table and keep going and, you know, realize your own dreams. And like when I talk about keeping food on the table, when it was just me and Neil, it's like, okay, we just won't eat tonight. You know, or, you know, we'll figure out a way to eat. But when you have this little baby, you know, you have to work it out. And I think around the time that we made the film, you know, at first it was like, you know, I was breastfeeding her, you know, that's mostly what she needs. But then at a certain time, it was like she needs food too. And you know, there were just practical things I think I was navigating as a mom, but it definitely changed my perspective because like I think after I had her, I went back in and Neil, you tell me if I'm wrong about this, but we had to add specific scenes, you know, I think to kind of start imparting that sense of like joy that I experienced and just
Yeah,
that connection with her. And it
definitely.
definitely, oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, definitely. We added scenes that kind of showed more of the joy in Turquoise and Kai's relationship for sure.
As you were moving along shooting or after the fact?
Um, that was definitely that. No, that was during the script process, but also when we got into the shooting, you know,
Yeah.
there was some things that I recognized, but I think what was most impactful was that it changed my directing really, you know, because like I said, you know, even with us folding in scenes, you know, I kind of noticed partway through, I was just like, okay, one of the things that we've got to do is we've got to find a way to impart this joy with Turquoise and Kai, you know, this connection that they're experiencing. And I saw the connection, but I wanted to be able to see more of the joy. So that was the way I was kind of directing actors, you know, we're here, but we've got to, you know, we're where we want to be, but we've got to be able to add this sense of joy, you know. And that was just part of, I think, finding, you know, seeking out and finding this, you know, nuanced performance, especially from Turquoise, you know, is seeing both the highs and the lows of, you know, navigating motherhood.
And Neil and I chatted for a second about the casting process, but for you, you know, as the person that leads casting, what was that process like? What were you looking for in these actors, and how did you find them?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing was what I just noted. Like, I was looking for nuance because we knew that we wanted to really make this really human story about, you know, Black life in this particular part of the South, and you know, with Juneteenth as a backdrop. So like nuance was like so important, you know, and I really was looking for actors who could pull that off. And it's interesting because when we started the process, I was still very much learning this whole idea of like casting, you know, actors who like I'd done, you know, in my thesis film, I was in it. So it was easy, you know, whatever. I said yes. Then in shorts, you know, after that, we had, like I'd done a short in January for Refinery 29 and Level Forward. And I had Dr. Tania Stewart. And, you know, I was able to kind of, I knew there was some personal connections. So I was able to reach out to her through personal connections as well and say, you know, I admire your work for so long. Is it something you would consider, you know? And then in this instance, you know, like the script goes out and, you know, Neil, stop me if I'm telling anything I shouldn't say. But the script goes out to agencies, you know, and they're then, you know, recommending and sending it out to see if people are interested in it. You know, you deal with casting in a new way, you know, it becomes like an offer only kind of thing, and, you know, a possibility for offer only and all of that. And I was really, really, you know, excited that we got to get the script in front of actors that I've admired for so long, and, you know, was familiar with their bodies of work. But I was also like really protective in a sense, because I was writing a story about the place that I grew up in, you know, and authenticity was like number one for me. It was like the most important thing. So like I needed to find actors who could, you know, walk and talk in the roles, you know, like an actor who could convey this sense of having come from the south side of Fort Worth, Texas. And so when we went out, at some point, you know, I think initially I was considering kind of the offer only kind of thing, and did very seriously. And then at some point, you know, I had a conversation with a friend who said, you know, it's okay to like want to see people in the roles, you know? And I went, whoa, you know, that was so big for me. And I'm lucky because I had financiers, I think, that never said to me, and producers that never said to me, you have to cast, you know, based on like, I don't know, I even, you know, y'all can fill it in, but like, you know,
money.
Right.
I mean, you know, that people like the phrase that like I've heard the most in my career that's really frustrating is she doesn't have value. And it is such a demoralizing phrase, but it is one that, particularly when you're casting people of color, women, like, she doesn't have value. And that just means distributors don't think audiences know that person and aren't going to come out to it. And it is for a producer, I would say it is the biggest struggle in getting a project off the ground, is hearing that phrase.
Well, we were lucky in the sense that, you know, we had, the script was greenlit. Neil may have said this, but it was greenlit on the strength of the script.
Yep.
You know, so there was never like, okay, there were never attachments before, you know. So I got to actually see these people read, you know, in the roles. And, you know, Nicole Bahari in particular, like when I saw her read for Turquoise, you know, I kind of have to go with, you know, and I'll talk about instincts, you know, as we go along, but y'all are hearing my daughters in the background. I kind of have to go with my instincts. And, you know, when I saw her read, it made me lean forward, you know, and I got excited because I saw the nuance that I was looking for, in particular for Turquoise, because like she's navigating this emotional journey that sometimes is even internal. So it was so much, you know, I knew I needed an actor who could, you know, we could see it on their face. And, you know, like the blink of an eyelash is important to me, you know, as an artist. And so I saw that in her read, and I also saw the nuance that I was looking for. And, you know, I was also familiar with her body of work, you know, so all of those things just kind of led to her casting. And the same with Kendrick Sampson, you know, he's from Texas, so that was super helpful, but like he's yeah, he's so great in this role, but he's from Houston, and it's, you know, the accent is different from Fort Worth, you know, and it was important that, you know, accent was such a huge thing, like, you know, that they be able to navigate that. And he came down and listened to like the local accent and was able to, you know, really distinctly pick up on it right away, the differences, and be able to convey that. And like the accent, you know, Nicole is an example, you know, I would send her voice notes from my iPhone.
Really?
Yeah, of me talking. But, you know, I've gone to, Neil and I met at UST, you know, so I've lived outside of Texas for off and on. And, you know, I try to hold on to my accent, you know, with my cold hands, I'm gonna hold on to that accent, you know, but it's still changed, you know, it's changed and morphed over the years. So like when she got here, she came in a little early just so we could walk her through the spaces, you know, that Turquoise would be in. And we sat her down with a family friend who really has never lived outside of Fort Worth, you know, and she was able to, you know, nail that accent. And that was so important to me because, you know, along the way, you know how it is when you watch movies and you hear that the accent is off or whatever, it can throw you out. So I was like terrified of that, but she nailed that. And the young woman, Alexis Chikeze, who plays her daughter, obviously is from Dallas and knew what it was to be a Black teenager in the region, you know. So that was super helpful. And then obviously a lot of the supporting roles, just like Turquoise's mom, Charlotte, the waitress Betty Ray, and the boss Wayman. They're from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're people. I mean, the only person I didn't know, because she surprised me, was Turquoise's mom. But the other actors, like I've known of their work for some time and wanted actively to work with them, so that was a no-brainer. But Turquoise's mom, just a story about this, and stop me if I'm talking too much, Rebecca. Look, you're like, yeah, you are, but I'm gonna let you go on.
No, I'm cutting you off. You keep talking.
But Turquoise's mom surprised me, right? She taught me something, about being a director, because I was so used to, like, wanting to work with people. I knew their body of work and was familiar with them, and had ideas about the characters in my head. But like, she showed up in this audition, and like it's really strange, because like she's like this really like graceful, classic and dignified woman, right? But she comes in this audition and she just has this, I don't know what you call it. It was, I don't want to say odd, because I feel like that has a negative connotation, but she threw me off, in the way that she presented the character. It had all that dignity and grace, but you knew something was slightly off center. And I love that, and I was like, this is the way I want to see this character. You really don't know where she's coming from, and then she surprises you. So she surprised me in this really cool way that I want to be open to, like, actors surprising me in the future.
Yeah. Well, for people who, Channing was saying offer only process. And for those of you who don't know, the difference of what she's meaning is that when you make an offer, you can make offers without even having financing. It's the real point of making an offer is that it goes to one actor at a time exclusively, and they don't audition. And so, typically when you go to actors of note, there is not an audition process. So that's why she was saying, when her friend said you should be able to see these people in the role, that is an audition process, and they're two different processes. And again, going back to like having financiers who are open to you doing that is the first step of really making an amazing film. And so it's great that you were able to go through that process. Were Nicole and Alexis familiar with the Juneteenth pageant at all, or was that new to them?
I'm kind of reading kind of articles about it, because like we just all hopped in, and
right.
And I think both of them are, definitely celebrating Juneteenth for the first time. I don't want to misquote them, so there's like articles out there on it, but like, I think it is a relatively kind of new concept for them to commemorate. But when I tell you they were both like, all in for Juneteenth and excited about it, that, it was really great to really, not just them, I'm talking about the whole cast and crew got excited about Juneteenth. Which was exciting for me, because it had been so much a part of my life, and it was just something that just was, and I was just really grateful to be able to, highlight it in some way. And to be honest, Neil may have said this, but it like when you're making an independent film, more than anybody, you don't know where it's going to end up. Like, I when we finished this film, I was like, like for a director, and I've heard other directors say this now, is you have that moment where it's like, what did I just do?
Yeah.
And so I can remember saying, I don't know, hopefully they'll be able to show this at the fictional place is called Wayman's, but the real place is called Lloyd's. And I was like, hopefully,
that was your expectation, right? That's as long as they
I loved everyone. I believed so much in everyone who participated, and they dedicated so much time to it, but it's always that little fear as a director. You're like, I hope that I was able to steer the ship, in this way that the film will go out into the world, but you just never know. You can never count on it, And Sundance Institute have been so supportive of us, but there's never a guarantee to play at Sundance, So I didn't know. And I just feel like all of the places that the film has gone has really been a gift, and really a gift that I didn't count on or expect.
Yeah. No, and that's a good shift, to that part of the conversation. Like I said, I teach a lot. And so Sundance has a website that has all the stats from the festival. And just so you know, there's a 1.4% chance to get into Sundance based on the numbers, including shorts, like the whole thing. There was 15,000 submissions this year. So congrats on that. But you're right. you know, so many people say their plan is to get into Sundance and have A24 buy their movie. Like I read that in so many applications, so many essays, and it, you know, it should be the goal, but not the strategy, you know. So why don't we kind of talk about, you know, coming, you know, as you're in post, coming out of post, Neil, what were the expectations in the plan? Everyone always submits to Sundance, of course, but you know, what were you guys prepping to do with the film while you were finishing it?
So okay, I had a general rule on set that I wasn't gonna talk any festivals. Like if people would say, "Hey, is this movie? Do you think it's gonna get into this festival, that festival?" I'm like, "We have a movie to make. There's like so much work
You
to
did
do
do
today."
that.
Like,
I think that's really smart. Like, let's focus on what we're doing.
right? Because I was just like, there literally will be like 2 to 3 months or however many months to just sit in a room and wonder all these things. So
Yep.
like, I think when we got to the point, it was like we're gonna submit to the places people submit to, and I didn't really try to care too much about where it played, as long as just whoever played it gave it the right home. Is really like, that was literally the thing I'd say, and I believed. But you know, it's like, I mean, the big thing is we made from a producer side, we made a movie that we hoped would interact with the marketplace and interact with audiences. And so it's like, okay, well, where are the places that can provide that platform? And so, you know, you have your Sundances and South Bys, and, you know, you apply and you just kind of hope, right, that somebody will find it and someone will give it the right home. And I think that for me was like the way I thought about it. Part of like my journey too was like being less result oriented and more like, what's the process that leads to people discovering the film, right? And so when we got into Sundance, it was great, you know, and I think it was very exciting. And that started a whole other process that was new to me, but not to my producers necessarily, of like, you know, getting sales agents and going to Sundance and, you know, dealing with all that stuff, which was very eye-opening and new. And yeah, so we can keep talking about that. But also, this is something I forgot to mention, and I want to double back because it was a big part of the financing. The nonprofits like Sundance Institute, who provided support with the producing lab, or Westridge Foundation, San Francisco Film, the Rainin Foundation, who came on in post, as well as Austin Film Society. While we were still trying to finance the movie, these were like transformative organizations. Like Channing said, that, you know, if we couldn't eat tonight, we just won't eat, or whatever, you know, or you're working, Channing's working her jobs, I'm working my jobs. And those organizations really helped keep, you know, Channing and myself like going, even before we had the, you know, support of other producers, or the financing and all that stuff. So that's something I wanted to acknowledge, because it's a big part of how this film, I think, was made, and there was able to be protection toward the vision. And it adds a layer of kind of like stamp of approval of like,
Yeah,
let's keep supporting this creative like Channing, who has his voice, and, you know, let's keep supporting that. So those are things I can't fail to mention on this call.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I have to shout Neil out about that. I don't know if you talked about this earlier, your idea that, like, when we were trying to figure out how to make the film, we were going to make it in this grassroots kind of way. I heard you all kind of talking about the mood reel and stuff like that. You know, Neil, and stop me, Neil, if you already talked about this.
we
But,
talked
you
a
know,
little bit.
he had this idea that, you know, we would submit the script to, you know, these different development programs that he's mentioned in competitions, and they would give us notes, because, you know, and he was like, oh, you know, if we get in, you know, but we can make the film better, you know, that way. And luckily we were able to connect with some of these folks and get into some of these development programs, which pushed the film further along. But I just can't tell you, you know, I'm telling you what you know, Rebecca, but just for everybody out there, like, who you partner with is like so important for your film, because like literally Neil had, when I would get in the weeds on, you know, like, where is this film going to go? Are we going to get this film made? You know, you were asking me earlier when I had to run off to baby, you know, how I stuck with it. You know, Neil was such a big part of that, because he had like, he wouldn't even tell me like ideas he had for the film. You know, he would just say, we should submit to this, you know, like he wouldn't tell me, like, he was like always like positive about where it could go, you know. And then later he was like, yeah, you know, I knew that was a possibility for us, you know. And I'd be like, what? You know, yeah, I could see that. I could see us doing that. And he was such a champion for the film and kept me going in many ways while I was like in the weeds of it, you know, wanting to make sure that the world was as specific as possible, you know, wanting to make sure the world was authentic as possible, reconnecting with folks from the neighborhood, you know, like all the things that we needed to do creatively to you know, bring this story that I had into my heart, into the world. Like, he was a champion out there getting it done. So like, partnership is like completely supportive in your film, and you really want people there who believe in your film, and that later led to our other producing partners who believed in the film, and financier, obviously. But I just can't tell you how the right person will protect your story and protect your vision. And it's hard to find that. And I mean, in this sense, he just happens to be my husband, and he got roped in too. But
but I mean, it just because he's his husband didn't guarantee it was going to go well. Like, it could have gone the other way. Yeah.
Totally.
It is hard to find those people.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be looking for those people. And I credit USC too with really, creating a space. Like, I think one of the best things you can get out of film school is relationships, honestly.
Yes. Yeah, no, I didn't prep you guys for a question about people that are just graduating, but like, I've asked it a couple of times in different webinars. Like, I don't know what advice you give to people that are graduating right now. You know, I'm teaching a class for AFI, and it's quite a time to be entering the world. And so I think that what you just said is interesting of using this time, even if you can't go out and just make a movie, is really putting time into making sure you have the right partners and spending time with people. I think that there's a lot of times you jump in really quickly with working with somebody, but the getting to know you phase, like, filmmakers get frustrated with me because it takes me a long time before I say I'm actually producing your movie. Usually I already start doing it, but because it's like, you got to get to know the person and trust them both ways. And so I think that's really great advice. Neil, talking about festivals, right. We, yesterday we're talking about how you guys, set out to make a Southern film, and very specific, authentically for a particular location and people and audience. But the truth is, the numbers of Black people in positions of power at festivals and distribution companies, is next to zero. And so, in this huge conversation of inclusion and diversity, like, you can only do so much, right? Like, eventually you hit that wall of, do people connect with your film? Right. So talk about that process a bit in terms of taking the film to Sundance, which really, is a LA, New York audience when you take a film to Sundance. It's right. We know the Texas people, and it's a group of them. So what was that like?
It was crazy. It was interesting because, like, it's my first time taking a movie to Sundance. This is my third time at Sundance, first time with the film. So, it was really interesting because I feel like, I'll tell anyone this, I think Sundance Institute and the festival did right by us. So I thought we had a great platform. Like, they were very supportive of the film, and I think what I found was very interesting is, like, Sundance is where we connected with reviewers who, like, are still championing the film. And I'll shout out some of them. I have Twitter handles. So Valerie Complex was, like, huge. And, like, Candace Frederick, like, she just wrote this great article in the New York Times about Nicole, and wrote an article about us in Huffington Post. But they were and Kathia Woods as well. Like, there were so many people who just, like, got the film early on, and, like, we're talking about, hey, reminds me of August Wilson, it reminds me of this. And it was kind of putting it in this frame that I felt was, like, consistent with what Channing's vision was, in a way. And that gave us, like, that was, like, the light, I guess, for me at least, like, the confirmation, like, we made this movie, and, like, there are audiences for it. And yet, like, there are other people, I think, and you could kind of see it before Sundance started, who were like, hey, this could be like, I don't know, like a pageant, a big pageant movie. People thought it was going to be like this huge pageant film. I think someone called it, like, Beyonce adjacent, like, homecoming kind of, and it was very interesting because it was like, that's not necessarily the movie, but, like, I could see how you could think it's the movie. And so it was very interesting, like, especially if you've not seen it, right? Yeah. So it was very interesting for me to kind of understand, like, Sundance, is all these festivals are so important about, not only positioning, but, like, what are people's expectations of the movie? And you take it a step further, like you're saying, New York and LA. Now, when I actually felt like I had somewhat of a perspective on being, not from Texas, because I wasn't from Texas. And when I first read the script, I had to come, and get a sense of it. So, like, I could understand someone from New York or LA who's not familiar with this world being like, wait, what exactly is this? And that's kind of what I felt we ran into, a certain extent, like, just people, like, maybe appreciating certain parts of the movie, but not really kind of getting the context of what Juneteenth was, why this matters. The last week, kind of, when everybody was talking about Juneteenth, kind of helped answer some of those things, which is kind of cool. But I think I left kind of, you know, and still in processing, frankly, all these things, like just kind of feeling like, yeah, like there's definitely kind of like this spirit of like, how do you find your audience at a festival, right? And how can festivals facilitate making sure all kinds of critics and all kinds of people are like getting in there and getting a chance to share their voice. I think Sundance is working toward that, obviously, you know, but it was just kind of, it was an interesting thing. I think for us, like, like, how do I say it? The premiere was so interesting, right? Because you go to the premiere and everybody's excited, right? And we were excited. And like, you know, a lot of people were packed in there to see it, a lot of sellers or whatever, or buyers, I'm sorry. And then, you know, everybody left before the Q&A because there's another movie they had to go to, which was like, okay, cool. But like the Q&A is really cool, guys, you should stay, you know, but it's all good. But then Monday when we had our next screening of Park City, it was like packed, everybody stayed, but it was, and like people were literally introducing themselves. Like the ladies who were doing the Q&A were like, hi, my name is like Shannon and I'm from Chicago and I love the movie for this reason. Like everybody, and it was like, this is who this film's
It's
for.
a real audience, not an industry audience.
Right. And it was like, how do we capture that and like share that with, you know, the world, right? So I don't know. And I guess back to your question about increasing diversity and folks like seeing it, it's like, how do you capture, like, you know, like like, frankly, because this is a film that we made for a festival. Like I realize now, like having, like I wasn't thinking at the time, but this is a film that was going to be benefited by festivals and going to different festivals and playing. And when that goes away, it's like, oh wait, how do we demonstrate to the market and to other people, like, this is the audience, this is how they respond. I feel like in the last week when the movie's released, we're now seeing some of those responses, especially like on Twitter and people interacting with the movie. But it was, you know, COVID really changed a lot. COVID changed a lot. And yet I'm very grateful that we had Sundance, because a lot of filmmakers didn't have, you know, their releases, whether it was Tribeca or South by or any other festival, right? So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's kind of.
Yeah, no, you are. And I mean, I think the question about, you know, your point about the festival, being in a festival film, most the people watching, myself, were making films where the festival circuit is an integral part of distribution. And so that piece has fallen out for you guys. And Channing, you were telling me yesterday, you haven't even seen the film on the big screen yet because you were with your daughter at Sundance and you were going to watch it at South by. So like, you know, was there ways in which you guys feel like you tried to supplement for the festival circuit, or is it like when it just drops out, there's nothing you can do? Was there any sort of pivot in the release because of that?
I think probably, you know, I've never been a big Twitter person, but I'm learning it now. So we've had these community of folks online, you know, that have really been championing the film, you know, and we even had, it was like bittersweet, definitely, because the day before it came out, we gathered, you know, just like local crew folks who worked on the film and cast and, you know, the community, and did like a drive-through kind of screening for them, a community screening. And after it, you know, you want to go up and you want to hug everybody, but after it, you know, you can't. And after, I think everybody was just there honking their horns. You know, people are finding a way to connect. You know, I'm gonna put my Twitter handle up in the Juneteenth Twitter handle because I think people are asking for it. But you try to find a way to connect. And what I found is like we've had these like champions online that have really been, you know, representing for the film. And really have, like Neil was saying, since Sundance, like, and I just didn't know because I wasn't like I was on Twitter and social media, but not like every day or anything, you know. Oops, sorry guys.
You can keep talking, it's fine.
Yeah, Channing's on Twitter all the time. She's gonna come back. But yeah, Twitter's been really helpful.
Yeah, that's Twitter and Instagram. Sorry, the handles that I put up.
Right. And so, you know, coming out of, so what were your expectations going into Sundance? You know, because I think that there's this myth that because you play Sundance, you're going to get a sale of your film, you're going to get a big sale. And again, that is only a fraction of the films that get in, the fraction of the films that get into Sundance, there's a fraction of the films that get that big sale. And it takes time. And so were there expectations going in for the team?
Well, you know, for us, I think, you know.
Listen, you have to.
Oh, Channing. You're still, okay, there you go. All right, so for us, I think the big thing, it was weird. I didn't have any expectations, honestly, going in. Because, like, I talked to James and Toby and David, and they're like, yeah, you know, sometimes they had said that they've had films that sold a month or two afterwards. So I didn't go in thinking like, we're going to go to Sundance, have a big sale. And I don't think any like even our sales teams, like we were, there was some buzz about it at some point. Like some people started saying that, but I was just like, that's for them to worry about. Like, like seriously, like whoever's writing this article, thanks for the shout out. Right. But I think what I expected, I just wanted people to see the film and just spend time with it. And I was telling our sales agents even, like, I think this is a film people are going to have to sit with, and I'm happy for them to sit with. And we want to find the people who are enthusiastic about it. Like, I mean, I've heard stories from other filmmakers who you get a sale or you get a nice distributor or fan, whatever people say they want, and the distributor doesn't get the movie and is like trying to make it something else, and you're stuck. And it was just like, I mean, I knew enough from hearing those stories to say like, hey, if it takes time to find the right partner, like let's find them, because I just felt like it was a film that needed kind of some love and care. And I do want to say one thing. Amelia, I'm on here, who's at Sundance. We did go to the Salt Lake City premiere or screening, and that was great. But what was really cool about the Salt Lake City screening at Sundance was that there's actually like a little argument that built up not on Twitter, but like it was between like some people had seen the film at Salt Lake City and left, I think 20, 30 minutes into it, because they're like, this is not the film they expected. And there was like a little argument on Twitter that happened between the audiences, like, why would you leave? That was so disrespectful. This movie was so this, and you missed this, and you missed that. And I'm like, yeah, see? So, it's cool.
They were probably expecting that big pageant movie. And
right, and that's where it's like, I think it's kind of cool. And honestly, like for me personally, I feel like I'm going to make movies for those conversations, like you want to make a movie for like an audience member who doesn't know Juneteenth to like talk to an audience member who does and say, no, this is why it matters to me. So like, that's what I wanted, and it felt like it was there. It was just like, how do you capture that when, if we're making a movie that needs a little bit more time and we aren't necessarily going to be a film that's like big splashy sale at Sundance, like how do you keep people engaged and think about your film when COVID takes the festivals away? So I think for us, it was like, neither of us are big Twitter people or, social media people, but Channing, is on Twitter now and engaging with folks. And I mean, we've had, reporters and other people who want to cover the film who reach out to the Twitter page, and we connect them to the PR team for the distributor. Vertical's been our distributor, and like everybody, they're adapting to like what virtual cinemas are and what is in drive-ins. And so initially we had like a day and date release planned for our film. So I have to give my hats off to Vertical, because they've really like figured out, okay, let's do virtual cinemas, and they've listened to us about, we really want to make sure like these organizations that support us can participate in a virtual cinema thing. So I mean, it's everybody's kind of figuring it out, but there's definitely a supplementation. Like, how do we find those folks? Like,
Well, and even too, we were talking about how, and I've had movies be both theatrical and just digital, and it's a weird, like very anticlimactic feeling of like your movie goes out in the world, and then like, well, wait a minute, and then you don't have the festival screenings, and like the interaction that you have with an audience with your film is so. It is, for me, the thing that I thrive off of. And then when you just have these films that just get pushed out digitally, you just kind of don't know how to react to it. And also to make sure that you get the chance to really celebrate. It's a huge achievement to get a film out in the world. And it's hard, it's hard when you don't have that festival experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Neil was talking about, the core audience that we connected with early on. And, if I was just in awe being in Sundance, and I'll have to, if we have any time left, I'll have to tell you all about my Sundance notification call, because that's a whole story in and of itself. Yes, Zora, here, take your popsicle. But basically, we got a really we were able to, like Neil was saying, connect with our core audience, I think, and our champions who've continued to be champions. And Neil shouted out some folks, but I shouted out some more folks in the comments. And not everybody, I'm gonna forget some people, but I've been shouting you out on Twitter too. But
John 9 just commented that they all wanted to make that call.
Oh my gosh. I think Charlie made the call, and poor guy, because like he called and I missed his call, and he sent a text, and I like to try to be as ignorant as possible about these things, how you get notified, when you get notified and everything, which is crazy now, because now I know, thanks Sundance, Oh, Zora, here. Okay, y'all, thank you for being patient with me and Zora right now. But basically, so Zora, my baby, is downstairs eating and Neil is with her. And I got a text from them saying, hey, this is Sundance, call me back. And I thought that, you know, I'm so ignorant. I thought they called to tell you yes or no. You know what I'm saying? I thought it would be like, hey, you got close, you know, and we love you, you know, we appreciate you submitting. We love the promise, you know, but I didn't know. So I snuck off into a room because like I told you what Neil has meant for the film, you know, and I didn't want him to be disappointed, you know, and I didn't want to also be disappointed in front of the baby. So I snuck off and called Charlie back and he's like, you know, he said, I can't remember exactly how he reintroduced himself, but all I remember, and it's so hazy now, was like, you know, we want to welcome you to Sundance. And when I heard Sundance, I just like burst out crying, you know? And I think, Neil, you heard it in another room, right? You were feeding Zora. So you were like,
I didn't know what was going on because you were like asking all these questions. I'm like, it sounded like a doctor's call. Like I thought the doctor called or something. I'm like, what's going on? Like, is there something I'm supposed to be worried about? Like you were happy and then crying. I was like, huh?
So what he was telling me, he was giving me like details about, you know, coming into Sundance and everything. And I didn't hear any of that. All I heard was, you know, like I was just crying. And I was like, thank you so much. I'm sorry, I'm a mess. I was like, you know, Neil is the producer. He's probably going to call you back for details because I'm not hearing any of this after Sundance. And true indeed, I go downstairs and I tell Neil, he's like, what? And then he's like, first thing Neil, you know, Mr. Detail says, what category are we in? And I was like, I don't know.
Does it matter?
All I heard was Sundance, you know, and he goes, no, you know, and I said, no, I don't know, Neil. I'm sorry. All I know is we're in Sundance. And I told Charlie that you would probably call him back. So here's his number or whatever. And then he's like, and then it hit me, you know, how you hear stuff like a couple of minutes later or whatever. And I said, I think they said we're in U.S. dramatic competition. And Neil just fell out. He's like, no, you're lying. And he's like, I was like, here's his number. Like, hit him up, you know, whatever, get the information you need. And then, you know, I think you texted Charlie or called him or whatever.
Yeah, I texted. Yeah, we talked.
Yeah, but anyway, Neil confirmed it, you know, from someone who didn't go crazy after they heard Sundance, and that was all she wrote.
It's a fun call. I will say, for one of my films, John Nine called me and tricked me, and it was one of the most fun moments of my career. So they've gotten really good at those things. We don't have time for that story, but
okay.
I want, you know, to kind of wrap up, I think, you know, what, you know, for people who haven't made their first feature, looking back, what advice do you give in going through this process?
I mean, you know, I was making this story about this really determined character, and that character really comes from, you know, I've talked about this in interviews, but it really comes from, you know, like the women that I grew up around, you know, just like my mom and grandmothers, like women in the community who were like determined, you know. So there's like so much of them in Turquoise, and, you know, so much that has been passed down to me. So there's so much of me in Turquoise. So I just have this really like determined spirit. And I was talking to you about partnership and how it's important to have the right partners who champion the film, you know, Neil, who stuck with the film the entire way. And then, you know, Sailor Bear, who came on and championed the film, who found, you know, a financier who was like, you know, believed in like Lift Every Voice and Sing being at the beginning of the film. So like, I think if anything, what I've learned to take from this experience is to trust myself, you know, trust the reason that I made the film, like, trust my own instincts, you know, and my own inspiration for making the film. Remember why I made it in the first place and the passion that I had in my heart. And that's what drove me the whole way through all of just like the, you know, all the ups and downs, because there were many ups and downs on the film. You know, there were many times where I think we always from the beginning felt like Neil was talking about the 7D and the iPhone, and we were going to make the film no matter what. We didn't know at what level, you know. And so I think it's important to just remember, because like I can remember being on set, and, you know, for a first time feature filmmaker, I had made shorts, but like I've said this before, it's like making a feature is like taking the training wheels off, like, you know, and I was making it with a baby and a baby carrier, you know, and running back and forth and breastfeeding and everything. Like, you know, if there was a normal experience, this wasn't one, you know, this idea of what a normal experience is. But I kept remembering, I think when my collaborators even would have questions about, you know, what does this need to be? What is, like, questions you don't even think about, just like little things like Olivia Peoples was our production designer, and, you know, who brought in people that were amazing on props, you know, and it would be little things like, you know, what should this ring look like? You know, what color nail polish should Kai have on? What should, you know, all of these little things. And it has to come back to like why you made the film and what community you're representing and what kind of, you know, women are you representing in this story and what is it saying, you know? And so that was something that I had to learn. And I just hope people can, you know, in making their first features or even in, you know, developing their first features, they can remember why they wanted to make it in the first place.
That's great. Neil?
I would say when you're making your first film, always shout out your collaborators. I want to shout out Daniel Patterson at DP, Rachel Danny at Best. I want to shout out Jeannie Igo, producing partner, obviously Sailor Bear.
Rachel corrected me. It's Rachel Dana Best. She corrected me after an interview. Yeah, go Rachel.
Okay. Go Rachel, go Rachel. Yeah, I mean, you know, Olivia Peoples. I mean, just so many people like really just poured their heart and soul into this film. Like Lucky Post in Dallas, like it's just a lot of folks just really, you know, I was just, you know, for me, the big thing I learned is like, you don't have to do everything yourself and you have partners so you don't have to, right? And so it's like learning that is constantly, you know, understanding when you're like helping and really just creating that environment for people to do their best creative work, I think.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about mentorship, but you know, y'all probably gonna be hitting Rebecca up after this, but
oh yeah,
you know, mentorship's so important because you know, along the way there were mentors, not one that I can distinctly say, but just like I went through Austin Film Society and they brought in like I probably, you know, bless Charles Burnett because I probably didn't have much to say in his presence because I was just so in awe. But they brought in Charles Burnett to mentor me for their intensive, and Richard Linklater has been a mentor, and Gina Prince Bythewood has reached out and been a mentor. And, you know, not just mentorship, but like there are other filmmakers that have been so supportive on this journey. Like Matthew Cherry has given me my Twitter lessons, you know, and he's been incredible. And along the way, people have just, and not to mention all the mentors that Neil, you had through the Sundance Creative Producing Lab, and mentors that, along the way, they've just reached out to us. Terrellyn, who is an editor for Gina Prince Bythewood's films, and just the consummate artist. I love her so much. Like she put her arms around us and held us tight. And I'm just so grateful. Like I'm missing folks, but I just wanted to kind of illustrate that, you know, there'll be folks along the way when you think you want to give up that I feel like will reach their hands out, and you should take that helping hand. Cause like I didn't, growing up, you know, I was just this determined woman from Texas who was like, we're gonna do it, you know, and it was often hard for me to ask for help. So baby's calling, but mentorship is important.
Mentorship. I want to add Lisa Churgan as well, and then Zach from IFP. Like, you know, there's just so many organizations. I mean, everybody, I feel like at this point over the years really just kind of touched this film in different ways and kind of gave a piece of themselves to like help, you know, create the Channing's vision. So that's a lot of people.
I really saw that, unlike other webinars I've done, the amount, like once I put it up on Twitter, the amount of organizations that then reposted it, we supported it. It was quite incredible to see, you know, how many organizations and people were involved and loved the film and helped you guys. And I think that's really great advice, but none of us do this on our own.
Right.
You know, I want to thank you guys both for being here. I personally had a really shitty week, and so this has been a really nice way to end the week, and it really, you know, put me in a much better mood. And I really appreciate your time. And you know, there was a handful of questions. You know, I was watching the chat. Some of them are really kind of minuscule questions, but if you go to dearproducer.com, there's so many articles, so much great information from other producers. The other webinars we've done are up on replay. This will be up on replay. We will add captions, so it'll just be a couple days before I post it. And you can share it with others. And again, sign up for the newsletter so that you don't miss out on the future ones to come. But if you haven't seen the film, go watch it. It's beautiful. And I know if the audience could clap, they'd be clapping for you guys right now. And so just a big thank you, Neil and Channing, to sharing your story and being here with us. This really was a lovely way to end the week.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having us. And I mean, and yeah, go ahead, Channing.
Also, I wanted to say too, if people like, you know, people have been so kind and wanting to buy the film for other people. So you can check out my Twitter if people can't. You know, if money's tight right now, just hit me up and I could likely send it to you because there are people who kind of take on buying like 10 copies at a time, and I've just been trying to send them out as I can. I'm a little slow going just because we're navigating.
That's really great.
Press and everything, but I have a Twitter link up, and also on Juneteenth movie, you could just hit me up.
Great.
And shout out to our editor Courtney and Rob, and I'm just trying to remember everybody.
You don't have to read the whole credits. It's okay.
I know.
They know you love it. They know you love them.
Just want to make sure, you know.
No, I get it.
All right, yeah, I'll leave y'all alone. All right, guys.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.